It's a fabulous film. Tell us about that first.
Edward Enninful, the editor-in-chief of British Vogue, had the idea to do a video about couture. And so I sort of jumped on the idea, and he basically gave me total carte blanche. He said, you know, do whatever you want, it's your interpretation of couture. And so I love cinema, and so I went full on to do sort of a James Bond girl, you know, gone on the verge. And I had a great time, and it's something that I guess is a fashion video, but it's slightly more cinematic, and it takes from other references from Visconti and film noir. So I love doing it.
So, a wonderful film and full of life and energy, but not much jewellery that I could see, but I can see you are wearing two beautiful earrings, each one completely different.
Yes, today I'm wearing my stuff. That bracelet, and this and that, inspired by my daughter's toys. I mean, literally, I was actually playing with her in the playroom, and I was lifting these toys, and I put them near her face, and I thought, oh, well, that kind of looks amazing. What if I did that for us, women? And so I started, you know, roughly drawing it with sort of very blunt Crayola colors, kind of like the wooden toys. And then I guess it's a whole other process where you take it to the atelier, and you're challenged by the materials and the stones, and it becomes more subtle. Like you cannot actually find a ruby that will be this bright red, and so you have to adapt and try to make it more feminine and wearable and soft and sophisticated, I hope.
Indeed. It's interesting because we've been talking a lot today about different languages, different people, and you have, tell me if I've got this right, an Egyptian mother, a Lebanese father, and an English-speaking husband. So how does that blend of cultures and languages manifest itself in your work? Do you draw inspiration from your different backgrounds?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a mess, and I was born in Switzerland, and it's true, my mother is Egyptian, my father is Lebanese. I lived in Beirut for about 5 years, and these were incredible years, and Beirut is also a very francophone, francophile city, so I was at the French lycée, I would read French books, watch French movies, and so you have all of that I guess is half of me. And then on the other side, I mean, I'm kind of the generation of television, and I grew up watching movies from all around the world, and I would watch all the movies by, you know, Truffaut, Téchiné, Jacques Demy, and I'm inspired by all of that. So there's a part of it that's real life, and something that's quite virtual and that stayed within me, and that I have an emotional connection with, and that I kind of try to bring back into my work.
But isn't that modernity today? And we've heard a lot of people today talking about this whole idea of the mix, really. Everything seems to be a mix, but in a good way, a mix but not a mess.
Yeah.
And in your case, of course, your actual thing that you do is to make jewellery. And I wondered what draws you to jewellery rather than other things. Is it actually the stones that you're interested in? Is it the colours, or is it the flat shapes we've just seen?
I think I have, my head is a little bit in the clouds. I'm a dreamer, and it's very hard. I'm slightly withdrawn from reality, and doing jewelry is actually a very good thing for me because it's tangible, it's real, it has a weight, it has material, it has stones. There's a beginning and an end, and that's very good. And through jewelry, I can tell my story. I can explain, you know, I can tell a whole film through objects, through jewelry. And I guess that's why as well, for me, making the photographs that go with the piece of jewelry is just as important, because it's not just a piece of jewelry, is where does the jewelry exist? Who is wearing it? What is the story? What is about to happen to her? What does she look like? And that's why I kind of love doing these photographs where I don't use models. I use people that I know, that I love, that I admire, and they're a little bit like the cast of my own film. So it always goes back to cinema, very much.
What relationships do you have with your customers? With the fine jewellery line, it's very much a personal thing. It's very independent as a jeweller. I mean, you basically treat customers one by one, don't you? They're private clients, and that seems to be rather a modern way of luxury.
Yeah, totally. And sitting here today, it's really something that I understood is actually happening, is that for us, I mean, young, small brands, Instagram has totally changed the game for us, because all of a sudden people have direct access to you. So when someone wants to buy a design, they can actually direct message the designer and, you know, tell me what they think and what they like and what they don't like and what they want and when they want it. And they're demanding, but I think it makes sense because jewelry is expensive, and jewelry is meant to be something that, you know, you're going to pass on generations. So the least we can do is have a conversation, and Instagram has created that link. I mean, I did the whole other thing. I did the route of going through the stores and, you know, producing a huge amount of stock and being super excited because this huge store was going to take my stuff and blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, over time I ended up being in a room with corporate people who were telling me that my designs need to be, you know, slightly more like this and a bit less like that and a bit lighter and a bit this and a bit that. And it actually didn't sell. It didn't even sell as well as my own stuff because my heart wasn't in it. And so I kind of understood. I was like, if I want to keep doing this long term, I should do it directly, speak to people directly and do my thing.
Without being indiscreet, can you tell us, though, about private clients? Because I hear a lot of people today saying that there are a lot of quite spoiled people who are very, very demanding and will say that, you know, well, my wedding is in 3 weeks and I want it now. Or I love the idea of the jewels, but my sister's wedding is coming up. I mean, is this an invention or is it a bit like that now?
Yeah, it's like that. It's like that. It's as soon as possible, and you know, when I think the word weeks is like a nightmare for them. It's a turn off. But you know, it's jewelry, and I try to do it as fast as I can because I also very much enjoy the direct thing. I don't like to have to go through corporation. I'm like, yeah, I can get it done for you, da da da, but it will take 3 weeks. And if they like it enough, they'll wait. But in a way, they're not so demanding in terms of design. They're more like, you know, we go to you, we like what you do. Can you put a huge diamond instead of this blue sapphire that you have there? That would be great. So it's more of a tweaking of the design to fit, let's say, an engagement ring. Mm-hmm. And that I'm happy to do, and I do it as fast as I can. You
actually work, a lot of the workmanship is done in Lebanon, is that correct?
Yes.
And is that a family connection, or did you just find it out?
No, I started doing my jewelry in Italy. And over time, you know, I would go back to Lebanon to see my family. I have my grandmother and my mother who live there. And I thought, but it doesn't make sense. I don't actually have a connection to Italy. And in Lebanon, you have incredible artisans. And, you know, you have a whole neighborhood in Lebanon where you have Armenians, families that have been doing that generation after generation. And what I'm wearing is made by them. And they do incredibly refined work. And I thought, why not? Why not, you know, reconnect to that?
You've been in this jewellery business now for 6 years, I think. And of course, you've recently had your baby, your little girl, Jean. So you have been busy with that, no doubt. But how do you perceive developing in the future? Isn't this a bit of a crossroads time when you have to decide which way you're going to go?
Yeah, I have too many ways I want to go. I think that's you got to have one clear message, apparently, when you have a brand. And there's so many things that I want to do, but at the end of the day, the DNA is me, so I'd love to do more videos, more images, more jewelry, as long as it's faithful to who I am. And I'm not going to put anything out there if it's not a story I want to tell. I actually was totally running out of inspiration. I had nothing to say. When I had my baby girl, I was so in love and, you know, totally soft. And then that gave me the idea. And I was like, you know what, that's a story I'd like to tell. It's innocent, it's happy, it's colorful pieces that I'd like to put out there. So I guess as long as I have ideas, I'll be around.
Do you think that luxury today is very much better when it is personal or feels personal to somebody who buys it? Is there that feeling that it's got to be made specially, that it's not just a product?
I don't know if the product needs to be exclusive. I don't know if that's what is so attractive, or if the way you put it out there is personal. It's funny how via Instagram and social media, I notice, you know, I'm going to pay quite a lot of money to put together a campaign. I'm going to put out the campaign, and then let's say the next day I'm going to post a picture, you know, of that piece of jewelry like that. Literally, it's going to get way more attention, way more likes, way more requests about it than the whole campaign I tried to do. And to me, this is a message that the customer is sending us, is that they want the real deal. They don't even want the manufactured real deal. You know, they don't want the fabricated photo shoot that looks real. They want the real deal. They totally outsmarted the way the whole communication works. And so great, it's cheaper.
You say that, but all the same, it is possible, isn't it, to build a business which has the two sides to it, that is what I would call personal, that has personal ideas, but at the same time, is there any reason why you couldn't have a small store so that people could see it there?
I'd love that, but it's expensive. I'm trying to find a way to answer your question. You know, jewelry is so niche. It's so niche that it would take a lot of, you got to put out a lot out there to get your own store, and then slowly wait for the returns. And I'm not sure I'm ready to take that pressure. I think I don't do well with this sort of financial pressure. Already I feel like I'm two people because I have my own brand and I want to be free with my ideas, even if they're not necessarily sellable. And so having a store, I think in a way would weight me down too much.
I've always had this idea that there ought to be a kind of group of women designers for jewellery, because I do think that there's a different point of view. Of course, all designers are different anyway, but certainly, you know, for the longest time, jewels were, whether they were made by men, they were usually made by men, but most of all they were bought by men, and they therefore had some symbolic way of wanting to give something to a woman to mark the fact they were going to be together with a huge engagement ring, whatever. Jewels that are made by women are slightly different, aren't they? Because they are things that you might want to wear yourself, but also something that would appeal to a woman who doesn't want something showy or flashy.
That's so true. That's very true. It's more the approach is more like clothing, I find. That's why that we always have to try and regulate as much as we can the price point, because nowadays women want to buy jewelry like they buy an accessory, like something that would go with your outfit, without having to have the you know, a meaningfulness around it. It's not whenever you buy a piece of jewelry that it has to be a great event in your life, because otherwise you're going to have 5 pieces of jewelry throughout your whole life. And so I think now it's more casual. There's something about jewelry that when women design jewelry, they design it thinking you know, of wearing it every day, rather than to mark an event in one's life.
Does it ever occur to you as a jewellery designer that we've come to a stage when handbags can be as expensive as a piece of jewellery, and that they seem, these handbags, not to be something that you're supposed to love and grasp forever, but something that you put it aside and say, what's next? Are we in a very strange world when this is so?
It's so true, and there's a sort of psychological resentment to, not resentment, it's not the word, maybe reserve. I think people can buy a very expensive bag without thinking about it twice. It's like a coup de foudre. Whereas a piece of jewelry, somehow there's a psychological block where, oh, I have to think about it. It's the same price, but for them it's, you know, it's a bigger decision. Because of what we were talking about in your previous question, because jewelry is meant to be something that is more meaningful. But not necessarily. That's not my approach. I see it as an accessory, and it so happens that it is precious stones and metals, but it could be something else.
I'm very struck by what has been happening in the makeup and beauty world, and we're going to be talking about some of that tomorrow. But the idea that whereas beauty was once something very distant and very glamorous, and you hardly dared to get involved with it because you had to have your hair done before you went to buy the lipstick. Things have changed so much because of the internet. I mean, completely changed. So that now there are so many beauty people who are just ordinary people who love to look good and who like to pass their ideas on and do it by visually, so that you can actually see them doing the makeup and so on. Can you imagine? I could imagine a world when jewellery, I'm not talking about, you know, immense pieces, but when jewellery was sort of shown in that way, and when somebody was explaining how to put on the ring and make it look good and where they imagined you could wear it. Can you imagine that? You say you're interested in film and visual
I can make a film with that as a starting point. I think would people be interested in having a film that would tell them how to wear some, like the mode d'emploi is what you're saying, as to how to wear jewelry? I feel like people want to wear it their own way. They've crossed that.
I think the idea is more that they would buy it from you and you would tell them the best way of wearing it. That would be more commercially successful, I think.
Yeah, I should try.
Thank you so much, Sabine Getty, for talking about this. I'm a great believer in jewellery made by women, as you know, and we've talked about this subject before, but I do think that there is definitely a level of jewellery now which is below the grandiose pieces, which are wonderful. I mean, I love stones, but something that you've done here, using stones in unusual colours and making interesting pieces, I think is really very, you know, something very good to have in this world. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Suzy.